I'm here with my friend Nicholas, and I'm Melissa, and this is the first episode of our podcast, The Giants, which is going to be bringing you conversations between the two of us, as well as some of our friends and people that we are interested in speaking with, all about things that we're interested in speaking about, which includes topics like consciousness, spirituality, and how all of those good things affect our daily lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the first episode today, we're going to be talking about health consciousness and how we can be conscious of our own health and sort of how to navigate, through modern culture. Just really become aware of really what healthy is and what that means for me. And I'm going to explore that and what that means for you and for all of you listeners and, your own unique individuality. And to really just explore this topic that is just like so vast of consciousness, number one, and how to be conscious of your health.
Define what we mean by consciousness and health.
I was thinking the same.
And then, I think when you originally had the topic, you said spirituality, which I'm fine either one, but so
Oh, we
like if
did?
we're going to
Oh,
bring
yeah.
that in, then to like define that as well. And then
Yeah.
the other thing I was thinking of, like, I think it's important to talk about, I don't know if this is important, but I feel like it's like maybe, I don't know, maybe this is like something coming from outside of me, but I feel like you have to always address, or I don't know if like people are forced to, but like address like the systemic kind of stuff, like how health is like a privilege or like kind of like
Did
the,
you, I'm sorry, did you say system? What did you
yeah,
say about,
like
what do you
more of
mean?
like the systemic stuff where like some people they don't have access to health or like
Mm,
access to time or resources, like I feel like health implies like almost like an ability, and there's like a lot of conversation around like ability or like disability and how like society is set up for like people that are able-bodied. So I don't know if that's like, I don't know if it's necessarily important.
I think it is.
Well, yeah, I think it is important. I
Yeah,
don't
I
think it's
mean,
not important. I don't know what I meant, like, right. I don't know if we have to like incorporate that into the conversation. I feel like so many times like people are like forced these days to say like I'm a white, like cisgendered, privileged, blah blah blah, able-bodied. Like you have to like,
or like I'm covered by health insurance or I'm
yeah,
not.
or like you
I've
have
been
to,
I've been on the not side of that
yeah.
and
Or
still been able to keep health.
and I'm on the side of like, thank God I have health insurance, or I'd be like, you know,
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
hundred
I've
thousand
been
dollars in debt at this. I'm already in debt, but I'd be like $100,000 more in debt
I feel
than
you.
I
I mean,
already am. So I don't know if
yeah.
that's like, I'm not sure if I'm saying I need to talk about that from like a, like there's pressure coming from outside of me. I obviously do think that is an important thing because not everyone does have access to,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I think
a
I think
lot of
it's an
stuff.
I think it, yeah, absolutely. I think it's an important thing, and perhaps we could talk about like how you can still stay healthy even outside of that system. So like if you don't have health insurance, how could you stay healthy?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of that is preventative, you know.
Yeah.
It's doing things consistently day by day to, maintain and keep and increase your health.
Yeah. But I think even with that, we have to recognize that like people who are under resourced have a harder time, even like, even you knowing that if you do small things day by day builds consistency is almost like, who teaches you that? It's almost like a privilege to even have that, or have the time or the space to like do your thing every day consistently,
I get that. I
you
understand, but
know?
I also come from a family of people who abuse substances and don't really treat their body well. So like everything that I've learned on my own and from pretty good teachers that I've had. So
Well,
like,
right, but I'm saying like even that really is a privilege. I mean, because I work
yes,
with a ton of people that are under resourced, and there's like evidence that people that like are are in like lower socioeconomic categories have like less cognitive resources. So that takes like problem solving. Like I have to find out like teachers who could help me. I have to like figure out ways to like just not survive, but like thrive. So I think even with that comes, even that is, there's some like, I don't know if it's privilege, but ability there, there's some kind of like, it's still like needing a resource that you might be under resourced.
yeah, yeah, and that makes me think of um, it makes me think of going to the grocery store and this misconception you get where like to eat healthy actually costs more money. It really doesn't. Like if you eat really healthy and you go there and you stick with the basics and you're getting fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, some type of like whole grain like rice or you know um, quinoa, etc., and some like lean meat or beef, and you stick to those basics and you don't get any kind of like what I call fluff of like sugary nonsense like cereals and like candy, etc., or like any kind of sweet treats or like any kind of foods that are like heavily processed, and you stick to like the things that are just you know unprocessed. You actually you end up really getting foods that are good for you, and you spend less money in the long run. So like it might look like when you are checking out, like you're only having like groceries for a week instead of like 2 weeks, but the food that you're getting in that week is like maximum nutrient dense food. So you're gonna get more out of it. And by having those things, ultimately, I think they're way better for you than if you're just like eating like lunch meat and like cereal or like frozen dinners and shit like that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But I think even with that comes the like, do you have time to cook? Do you
Right.
have, I mean, and I have kids too. Like sometimes like your kids don't eat that stuff. What do they eat? Or also like um having access to it, I think could also be like another reason people just don't. And also even just the education behind like this food is better. Right? Like you look at some packaged food and it says like Nature's Bakery on it. So what's
Mhm.
not to make someone think like nature didn't make this? Like Nature's Bakery is the stuff you're talking about, like the meat and the vegetables, but there's no money in like sponsoring fruit advertisement or you know in advertising buying buy vegetables.
So how do we address all of what we just talked about and define I don't can we even define consciousness? I think like at best we could
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think you
what's
could
your
define
definition?
consciousness. Listen, there is like no specific definition of consciousness. There's like no scientific consensus, right? It's like the hard problem, right? That's what people call it. So I think it's kind of cool actually in a way because we could define it and say like in my opinion or in my experience like this is what it is and this is how I work with it. It may not be exactly like I mean nothing that we define is what it really is anyway because once you define it you're separating it from what it really is. So we're just giving like a this is in my experience what it is. And here like we're on the same page, so at least we know we're kind of like what we're talking about. And like so we can have a shared experience of this thing that like no one actually could put a finger on.
Yeah, yeah, I like what you're saying too. And looking at it as its own principle and understanding that the definition over time is probably going to change.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. And Um, so I have written down, understand the principle of consciousness, define consciousness, with the understanding that, it's going to change over time, and what you would define as consciousness, someone else might define it as something different, and both are legitimate. And there's probably, sorry, I'm laughing at what Christian told me. There's like, consciousness is just a word in the monkey mind, and I think that's pretty true. I
Yeah.
mean,
I mean,
you
that's what
know,
everything really is.
yeah, yeah,
Just gives you something to kind of like focus on, which is really what I just think of consciousness as. Like, what are you focused on? What are you paying attention to? How
yeah,
much can
yeah,
you actually like hold in your monkey mind, right?
yeah, yeah. And then I also too like think about it as awareness,
Hmm.
but then I also think about it as going beyond just the human mind and
Well,
ourselves.
it's certainly beyond the mind. I mean, I think if you think of consciousness, I think of it this way. So this is how I learned it from Hamilton. Um, so your consciousness is like all the ways you could take in information. So you could take in information from your brain. So then that's like your in your brain you have your mind and your imagination. You could take in information from your body, and that's like your senses, your feelings, your sensations. There's also like the emotional part of that, like your emotions, right, which is going to be more of like the mind's kind of understanding of what you're feeling, or like a tone or a quality of the sensations you're having. Oh, sorry, it's my printer. And then scared the crap out of me. And then so the emotions, and then there's like your heart, right? So that's like the organ that's not only this like part of your circulatory system, but it's like a feeling organ, it's a sensing organ, it gives off like its own energy. And then your voice, because that's how we know each, that's like how you know like what you're how you're expressing, that's how you know yourself, right? Is like, and so that's how you know. And through all of those pieces of yourself, that's how you gain your awareness, or like that's what you could focus on. So that's kind of how I think of it. And
Yeah,
then
I
that's kind
think,
of how I work with it. So then you work with like, I am brain, I am body, I am heart. And then that kind of encompasses like all of those things. And then I think that also overlaps with your health, because I was thinking about your health. So that's going to be like what, like the state of your physical body, but that then includes like your physical health, like the biology, right? And then there's like your mental health, and then there's like your emotional health, which I don't know is somehow different from mental health. And then there's like your spiritual health. And I think all of those things, I guess it's kind of like in my head I just saw a picture of maybe like what you would think like an I don't know if it's an electron or like a particle with like some stuff in the middle, and then all like the overlapping circles.
yeah, yeah. And then how consciousness connects all of it, because you're conscious of all of it.
Yeah.
And then I like to think about the earth as being conscious. And I know that's what a lot of spiritual traditions call Mother Earth, you know? And also too, like animal consciousness. There's a cat behind me, and I know she's conscious. Like when I say like hello to her, she usually responds to me, and she kind of has like this like really like cute meow, but she like mimics hello. She's like, meow, meow. It's really cute. But and that being consciousness, and I like to think about the whole planet as being conscious, and not just the planet, but the solar system and the sun being conscious, and uh, solar consciousness. And then I think about, well, is consciousness just inside the human being, or is it something outside of the human being as well? I don't know what the answer is, but that's how I
Yeah.
think about it.
Well, I don't think that we're separate from any of that stuff. So I don't know why like we would have consciousness and the stuff that's like responsible for creating us would not.
Yeah, it's a Western thought or a modern thought of being separate, but
Yeah.
we're really
And I
not.
think that's like a big part of our maybe lack of health
Yeah, absolutely,
is the
for
fact that
sure.
we do like view ourselves as so separate or so individualistic.
Yeah, and then we just close ourselves off in this little bubble, and then we isolate ourselves. And I also too think, in the lines of being healthy, as far as individual health goes, well, it's the individual's responsibility for individual health, but for the collective health and being conscious collectively of really what our health is, it's up to the collective. And if we're just like boxing ourselves off from the rest of the world and thinking that we're separate from one another, that really does lead to a lot of the modern mental malaises.
Yeah. And I think even what you said there, like that the individual is responsible for the individual's health. I mean, I think I want to disagree with that a little bit because I feel like, talking about those systemic issues, like people not having health insurance or not having access to information that's true, or information on how to take care of themselves, or even like if you think about how our current society is set up, like with a really big separation between like mental health and physical health, or like that our health is basically like commodified and sold back to us. Like to be healthy means you have to look like this, or eat
Mm-hmm.
like that, or work out like this. So individuals get all this information and then have to kind of like make sense of it. And no one like arrived here as just this one like thing that could survive on its own. So I almost feel like we're not necessarily individually responsible for our health. Like, yes, ultimately it comes down to the decisions that I make and then like executing on that, or like my intentions, or, the actions that I decide to take every day. But I feel like we do have some responsibility to other people to, you know, help them be healthy, because again, like we're not just like one individual thing here. So
Yeah, yeah.
so while I agree with you, you do have to like it is up to the individual again, like I said, to make the decisions, to take the actions, to know what they're aiming towards. But it's not just like I'm this thing and I could decide whatever I want to be healthy. It's like I am this thing, but like what's all the other stuff coming at me? What was I born into? Like all that other stuff we have to take into effect or take into consideration.
Yeah, I really like the way you put that too. With the understanding that, ultimately at the end of the day, it's up to you and your decisions to that are really going to be the deciding factors in the engagement of your health. But at the same time, there's a lot of these illusions within society. And then when you believe those, you become delusional. Like for me, hook, line, and sinker, like thinking like a lot of like exercises and like like pushing yourself to like 110%, go go go, rah rah
Yeah.
rah, is like something that's healthy, when ultimately for me it was never really healthy, and it really like pushing myself beyond what I was capable of has always led for me being injured. So yeah, yeah, I think it's hard to really, sort through all of like the information that you're given, and then, uh, it's not easy, you know, looking for the truth and finding it and finding out what truly is healthy for you.
Yeah, I totally agree. I definitely was in the same I fell into the same I don't know what the word is, the same, mindset of believing like one certain way was healthy. And if I didn't like exercise a certain way, like I wasn't really exercising. Or if I like my body didn't look a certain way, then like I wasn't actually healthy. Or right, I think that's a huge part of health too, is like what you talked about, the like always having to give 110%. I think like that drives me nuts because
Drove me crazy too.
there's so much. Well, right, like it literally drove me nuts. Um, that's like a whole nother story. But then, but then also it I feel like that is a big source of people's like disease or like lack of health, that we all believe that we always have to go 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 at 100%, and again not taking into all the factors of what we talked about, like of the health, but then like how are you supporting that health, how are you sleeping, how are you eating, like how are your relationships, how are your spiritual practices, like right, have you been how much have you been working, and then all of these other things in society that say like, all right, you get no sick days, or your work expects you to show up at the same capacity day in and day out, or like people not understanding their nervous systems, understanding that like some people have a capacity like that much and other people have a capacity like this much, and it's going to fluctuate on a day-to-day basis. And there's really just, I don't think there's a lot of consideration given to that, and I really think there's this idea of like everything existing on this like curve that's just going up and up and up and up and up and up and up, when like life is really just like expansion and contraction. It's not this just give all you got
Yeah,
every
yeah.
day and keep
I mean,
going at that pace.
for me, whenever in the past would try to give more than what I'm capable of, it always led me to burnout every single time. And then when I would try to like give less than that because I would be tired, and less than 100%, it just led to laziness. So, so when we were doing the dietas with Blue Morpho, the one thing that really came across through Hamilton's teachings and through the dieta itself was to just give 100% all the time, nothing
Mm,
more, nothing less. And I like that. I like that. It's a consistency, and it's not trying to be arrogant and do like more or less than what I'm capable of. It's just gonna show up and give 100% and give the best I have to my own health and my own conscious decisions on how I can um, stay vital, and where I can increase vitality, and learning where I can't increase vitality, like thinking like somehow like if I could lift weights again like I like I did in my 20s, like somehow that would increase my vitality. I know for a fact I can't do that. And I think knowing that fact is actually something that brings me health, and just this understanding that I can't really go back to those days and lift like that again. That doesn't mean that I still can't exercise, or I still can't like do the things that I like to do. It just means I have to do it in a way that's going to support my body and my overall well-being. And being conscious of that is really what I think what somebody would call health conscious. Just being conscious of one's health and where
yeah.
you're at in it, in your own unique journey. and and for me, looking at where I am that day and deciding like based on how I feel what activities that I could be up for, I noticed that has helped me, instead of just having like a really like rigid, I've got to do this day, that day, legs on a Monday, back on a Tuesday. Like no, all of that. I think over time to like really rigid structures, and ultimately they're going to break over time when you just can't do it that day, or because you're busy or tired or whatever.
Yeah. I definitely think that incorporates a lot of conscious awareness, right? Having to be mindful of how you're feeling, having to know that, right, working out at the same intensity or capacity every day might not be what your body actually needs, or like listening to your body and making decisions that are, are in line with what is the best for you. You're such a
Yeah,
shining example of health, Nicholas.
I don't know about that one. I don't know about that one, but
I do though. Something you said, like that you always give 100%. Do you think it's always like a hundred? Like, do you think it is always 100%? Because I feel like that's. I feel like. All right. So when you said that, I was thinking of like the Four Agreements. Is it the Four Agreements? You know that book by Don Miguel Ruiz. One of them is just like
I
always do
read
your
that.
best, but like recognizing that your best isn't always going to be like 100%. And I kind of feel like that's, that goes back to the point that I was making before. I mean, I don't know if it's just like semantics
I
between the
think
two of
about it
us at
different.
this point, but I feel like, um, yeah, like what is like how do you measure like I'm giving this 100%?
I think about it differently in the sense that, like sometimes giving it your 100% could just be knowing that you feel tired and go to bed. Or just like, I'm thirsty, I'm gonna take a drink of water. It could just be like something like really like small like that. It doesn't always have to mean like I'm gonna go give it 100%, I'm gonna go climb that
Okay.
mountain. And I look at it as holistic. Like if it's 100%, it's 100% of that one thing. And not not like I'm going to go, like I said, like go climb the mountain or go run 10 miles and give it my 100%. And then only it being like within that kind of box. It's just, like as far as understanding what health is, understanding how I can be conscious about my own health and about also how I interact with others, which I would even consider to be my own health, my interaction with people, my interaction with the community as a whole. Whichever community I'm in, whether it be martial arts or the job or the spiritual communities, and just showing up and giving it my best. That doesn't always mean like I'm going to show up and be in a good mood, but at least, perhaps it could be recognizing that sometimes I'm just not in a good mood and not taking it out on other people could be
Mm.
something that I could really just give 100% to, just to be able to have a good outcome for myself and other people.
Yeah, I get that. It's almost like your 100% is just like, am I aligned with the things that I value? Or am I aligned with, right, like what all these different parts of my body may be telling me today, or all these different parts of my consciousness are telling me today. Something interesting that came, I don't know if it's interesting, but what came up for me with what else you just said is like, you know, I don't always have to be in a good mood. And I think there's like another kind of, I don't know, delusion that maybe to be healthy always means to like be happy or to, be cheerful or to be full of joy. I mean, I know I try to like aim for these things, but I think it's only normal that, again, going back to the like dips, life isn't all just, it's not only the good stuff. So I
Yeah.
think even that, in our society, like I feel like obviously you don't want to go into work and be like, yelling at everybody because you're frustrated, but I feel like we can't even bring our full selves into places maybe like work or some other communities because of this almost like false notion that we have to be like one way all the time. And I think that's really unhealthy too. And I think that falls under like almost like that mental health or really just that separation of, us as a whole, like a collective, like, right, being expected to always be on, or maybe not, not reveal struggles, or also, like, right, how to say this? So I feel like that emotional piece is really, or like emotional or like feeling or sensation piece of the body is really neglected. And I think that's really reflected in our society, how so many people are not even in touch with their feelings or their emotions. And I mean, I think that's like a huge part of our health.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I was gonna say, I've been thinking a lot recently about like the health of the planet, because that's something, you brought up before, like Earth having a consciousness, and we kind of, talked about how we do believe that, not only are humans capable or gifted with this ability to be aware, but like the Earth is, and the the creatures of the earth, and then, bigger than the earth, like the universe, and all that stuff out there. So yeah, recently I've been really thinking about the health of the earth, and I think it's hard not to, when I think it's like a pretty big conversation these days of like climate change and extinction of animals and things like that. Not to be trite, just calling things like that. But I've been really questioning, like, what is my place in knowing what is healthy for the earth? Like, who am I, this one little individual person, to say what is, yeah, like what is a healthy earth? And like what direction we should be steering actions in to be healthy for the earth.
Yeah. I mean, the way I see it is, for me or you or whoever, really, you could be just one node among billions and billions of nodes on the earth. And, the question is like, how can you be a healthy part of that? And how could you, like, increase the health of others? I mean, it could be like something really, really simple as just giving someone a compliment.
Mm.
You know, like, I think a lot of times, like, we think about these like grand ways that we need to help out and contribute, when often, it seems to be like really like the small little details that can really have such big impact on people, like an amazing birthday wish, or just, like a simple like text message checking up on how someone's doing could just have a really big impact on someone.
Yeah, I love that so much. I've been thinking about that a lot recently too. Um, I think I read this in a book called Emergent Strategy, where it's this, by Adrienne Marie Brown, where she says like small is all. And it's just basically, and I've talked about this with you before too. I work with Dr. Sam Rader, where she talks about our fractal, and it just, we live in this holographic universe where like one little thing is magnified again and again and again out until like what we actually see, in the concrete, like in the world around us. And yeah, small is all. So it is just like those tiny little interactions that we do. Or also, like, going back to what you said, it is just like making those small little incremental shifts in a consistent way. Yeah, I really like that
Yeah.
idea, because then also it's so much easier. And if you think about it from that perspective, it's so much easier to contribute to the overall health. of yourself or of your community, or yeah, and then I guess those things in turn would probably equal a healthier earth or a healthier society or a healthier culture, or whatever the next bigger thing we're gonna the next bigger thing we're gonna label. When actually, going back to like the small is all, yeah, it really is just this one thing to begin with, and then I think the definitions grow and grow and grow, but we're actually it really
Still
is,
comes back to that
yeah,
principle.
it's really, yeah, it's all the ultimate, that one thing.
Yeah, it comes back to the principle of health. I think that's, really, what we're talking about and exploring this understanding of and the many definitions of what health can look like. And, it's sort of like dispelling those notions that it has to be like within this like, small little box of like it looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger or it looks like this model that,
Yeah.
or whatever. And it really doesn't, have to it doesn't have to be boxed into just one understanding, and there could be many understandings of what health is. And just kind of going back to that mental image of like just a node among billions of nodes, and how that node can then go and interact with all of those other nodes. I think you know when a lot about when I leave this earth, if I ever leave this earth, who knows? Like, if I don't know what happens, after I meet death, but like what I would like is I would like to really, at the end of it, really say that I have helped other people and that, I made this world a better place than what I found it. I find that, that same line of thought to be common among the people who use spirituality to be able to help other people. It's all the same thing. And then that goes back to the principle of health, of what we're talking about, of it being the same principle with many, many definitions. And also too, I'm pretty sure you've heard this before, and this also really ties into just our overall concept of what we're talking about with these just giant topics and just these giant things, like you said, like humanity's impact on Earth, on the Earth, and humanity's impact on one another, which is still part of the Earth. And really, what can we do to have it be for the next generation and generations to come, for many generations, and hopefully, an infinite number of generations. I mean, who knows what that's going to look like? I mean, it might not be human beings in like millions of years, but whatever that is, having it be better, and just this generational increase of bettering one another. And I think that's going on. I like to take a optimistic look at it. I mean, if you read about history and what it was like 100 years ago, or if you read what it was like 200 years ago, or like 1,000 years ago, I mean, shit, they were like crucifying people 1,000 years ago, like, I mean, things are pretty gnarly back then. And I mean, I still think that savagery does exist, but I don't think that it's as prevalent in, our species.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to remember, because I know I myself tend to look at like, this is wrong, that's wrong, like this system is broken. I feel like that's a lot of the conversation these days. But yeah, going back to the fact that, I mean, most people used to not even live to age 30, and like died from disease, and we didn't have like clean water, or like even some of the thing, or like even some of the modern medical things like the vaccines that really have helped people to survive longer. And right, like just the
Antibiotics.
brutality, yeah, antibiotics,
Hmm.
and even just like the brutality like you were talking about, I mean, it does still it exists. But yeah, I think it was just so much more, I don't know like what the right word is there, more outward or worse or
Yeah, I like to like how you brought up just, like overall like conditions that we live in. Like I know, okay, so last year I had a staph infection that I'm pretty sure I got at the mats from jujitsu. And like let's say that would have happened to me 300 years ago or 200 years ago or just before the existence of antibiotics. That probably would have been a death sentence.
yeah.
And I went to the doctor. I got prescribed antibiotics, and I was all healed. Like, thank you for the geniuses who created antibiotics. I'm really grateful for you people for real.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, I have to say thank you to modern medicine as well for many times saving my body from deadly diseases that, right, if I didn't have modern medicine, probably I would have been dead about 20 years ago as well. Or I just, had something that would have killed me, like you're talking about. Yeah, I think that's a really big thing to part of our health too is acknowledging, yeah, acknowledging everything that came before us. And then I think that just goes back to really that interconnected piece, or almost, I guess what we could call like that spiritual piece. I think that's a big, probably the biggest component, really,
yeah, I would
of
agree.
our health.
I would agree. It's definitely an aspect of our health, and uh, I mean, I was raised in a Methodist church, um, and that's from my childhood of what I understood about spirituality. And then I remember hearing about like Buddhism and things like that. And I was always in the martial arts, and like I thought like, like spirituality and then in Buddhism was just like sitting there and like observing your thoughts or just like not thinking about anything. And then just like as time evolved and my exploration of shamanism, spirituality for me has become an understanding of how I interact with myself and my own brain and my own thoughts, and then how I, interact with everything else, including the earth, including animals of the earth, like pets or plants, and all of those things, really. And going back to what you were saying of like, what is my place within the universe? You know, during a during a journey that I had this past summer, I really understood through this journey that my place in the universe is just to really find the love in my heart and extend it to others. And I don't mean that in a way of like romantic love or sexual love or anything like that, but just the pure essence of who I am, and that being found within the heart of the human being and many other creatures on the earth, of just this capacity for unconditional love, and understanding that really can be equated to many things. I mean, I often think about, love as being just an act of caring for something. It doesn't have to like, I don't know. I like things that are very practical, and so it could just be like, like sharing love with a plant and like giving it some water, or just like
Mhm.
you come home and like the cat's there, and you're like, hey cat, hey kitty cat, like just like a pat on the head, and just be like, those types of things, are just like with a family member, or just like saying, hey, I love you, or a friend, or any of those things, really. And then just the mystical understanding of like, that's really what I'm made of, like
Of
from
what?
the heart, that I know that's
Mhm.
what I'm made of. And yeah, and it's I still find myself like still like getting angry at other people, and or even just like getting sad at, the way society is going in certain aspects of it. But that's the work, right? And it's just like, continually finding that love and creating a connection, from the brain and the heart together, so that the brain doesn't really block off then that access to the heart. And I've
Yeah.
definitely found, in the spiritual communities that we're involved with Blue Morpho and the Total Awakening course, to really, I would say, definitely improve, my capability of being able to find that love, or another word for that could be compassion. And so I like to have a daily practice of, before I go. I didn't do it today, actually, so I don't know how daily it is, but it is quite often. I'm After that journey, I started to wake up in the mornings and just start invoking my core group of guides to be able to then guide me throughout the day. Um, and to really find within my heart the compassion for other people, and then to share that compassion. And like I said, it's not always easy. Like sometimes like people just hit you with like certain things and you're like, well, how do I even deal with that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that goes back to what we were talking about before, that it doesn't, or we don't, or your sense of things doesn't always have to be like, I'm op not that you're going to necessarily close off, but it doesn't have to be like, it doesn't have to be one thing. Like it's okay to, feel pissed off at the way someone, what someone did, or to feel angry, or to feel whatever is coming up in your body. I think that's really a big part of health also, is kind of embracing and accepting and having grace for whatever comes up, like all of the things that come at us, and all of like the different things or systems that we're a part of. Like how we talked about before, like all the systems, even, there might be things that are wrong with them or that we could call bad right now, but really, if it weren't for these systems, I don't know what else there would be. But we did manage to create, something where people are much healthier, are living longer, are more prosperous. I mean, and whether or not we're going to like criticize all the stuff we have, or or be grateful for it, I mean, I almost think those are like the daily, we were talking about those daily decisions that we really get to, get to kind of be conscious of. And then I really think that is just like part of your conscious of like being able to hold both of those things within yourself, and yeah, still being healthy, still being balanced within it all, still being, still having the capacity to go about your day and take care of what you have to take care of, or still being able to love, or still having your heart open, not like it ever closes, but I mean, you could literally sit, like turn around and like, clench
Yeah.
it down yourself.
Or that just the brain cuts it right off.
Yeah, well, I think there is a big split in our society between
Yeah.
things of the body, which is so like pleasure and indulge it like in the bodily senses, or like the sensuality of it all. There was like kind of it was looked down on. It was, viewed in like disdain for a long time. Like, people talk about how like our, like the US especially, was like founded in like a purity culture, and that purity was like, I'm very right, like I'm intellectual, I'm controlled, I don't give in to my impulses, and right, it's all about living like from the neck up.
Yeah. And it always seems to like, and it definitely has seemed to backfired. Or I forget what I was listening to, where it was like talking about like like generations after that, of like after all of that repression. I forget who I was listening to, but this is like the idea that they were talking about is like after all of that repression sort of like dissipated, it was like the flip opposite of that coin, and it just like went out and into that complete opposite direction of like hedonism.
Yeah, there's
And
always like such a worry that we're gonna like turn into would it be or hedonism?
something like that. Yeah.
Well, that's like the 60s and 70s, right? Like that's like the
Right.
drug culture and free love and
Yeah. Yeah. On all of that. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, there's definitely like a fear of that, right?
Yeah. I think, yeah, there's definitely a collective fear of that. No, I
The
mean,
fear of our own bodies.
yeah. And also too, like you opened me up to something, and that was you were saying that you feared your own health. And then
Yeah.
I was thinking about that, and like I really considered that. Um, like even for me, like I know it took me, okay, so it took me from 2013 up until like a month ago to go get a lump under my chin checked out, right? I was so scared like to find out if it was cancerous or if it wasn't. It took me that long, and like I canceled like numerous doctor's appointments because of it until like I just worked up the courage to go find out. And it turned out it was just a lymph node that was swollen, and it has been swollen for years, and they told me like that it could just like stay swollen. I was like, oh,
Hmm.
that was all it is. All of that fear, all of that fear that prevented me from just finding that out in the first place.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was scared of my body and how you reflected your own fear of it. I think because what I've kind of like been thinking about and understanding about that is it really is such a big unknown. And I think, luckily, we're just born with the intelligence of the universe, and our body is really capable of working on its own to an extent. I mean, we do have to be stewards of that in some shape or form, but there is just so much going on in there that we can't know or won't ever know, or also like have to rely on experts to tell us that there is so much, I think, uncertainty involving the body. And then too, going back to the piece of how like feelings and emotions and sensations haven't always really been a big part of the conversation. I think that kind of contributes to that too, because those feelings and sensations, like whether it's fear or pains or discomforts or sufferings, like aren't always, again, they're not always welcome in the spaces that we have access to.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the one thing that the one thing that really benefited me from going through the Total Awakening course was to be able to separate the notion of feelings equaling emotions, but seeing
Mm.
those two rather than as two separate things, whereas the emotions is the brain processing information, and feelings are in the whole body. And this is what I've been working on recently is that part of the course where you learn when things are happening that you don't understand, to make a conscious connection of the whole body and the way that the whole body feels. And I noticed that's been really helping me at the job, and to deal with stress, and to, like you said, like with certain emotions, like it's not always appropriate. Like if you're at the job and you're pissed off about whatever, to like outwardly express those things isn't appropriate, and there can be repercussions for it, for sure. And to be able to then turn to the whole body, to be able to feel and to really have the tools to be able to then uh, process those emotions through the feelings of the whole body really, I would say, has greatly improved the quality of my life, and really the quality of my health too, and not being trapped within that hamster wheel that just spins round and round and round, trying to use emotions then to get out of emotions.
Yeah, like using your logical brain to solve a problem that it's not even a problem. It's right. You just have to turn the body on and then use the the body and the energy of the earth. I do it the same way. And I think it's so helpful because it helps you to stay out of that story too, which then it just kind of like feeds itself. It's, I guess, kind of like I don't know, is that a feedback loop? It just
I would
makes
say
it
so.
worse and worse, right? But I also think that I think the way our nervous systems work, we also are like, we thrive on those chemicals that are created when we are in that loop. So it does take like a lot of like conscious effort to establish that kind of practice and to
Yeah,
not find yourself caught
yeah. I mean,
in those loops.
for me, I think for a long time, like I've had anger destroy a lot of relationships for me. And for me, it was like, I don't want to be like that anymore. And I know like it's something within me that I need to solve. And by, making that conscious effort of really just going on the journey to solve those things, um, I would say has brought a peace for me in accepting myself. And I think that's also another key aspect of health,
Self
is accept.
acceptance.
Yeah, it's self
Yeah.
acceptance and where you are in your own journey in life, for whatever that is, really.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That's definitely something that I've worked on for a really long time.
Yeah, and I don't think it ever stops either.
Yeah, probably not.
I think like as long as you're like, I think as long as you're embodied and you're in this human form, I don't think it really stops.
And
I also
having
don't.
to interact, like having to be like this interbeing with other people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. How do we consciously get better at at our interactions with other people?
I mean, I think everything really starts with just, I hate to say being better because, um, just, I don't know, in a way it almost like implies like a worse, right? So just for my own kind of practice, I guess, staying away from, not staying away, but trying to approach things from like, I'm just whole as I am and not necessarily have to be better or more. But that's kind of just a tangent. But I really think, wait, tell me the question again.
Okay, so I'll reframe it.
No,
How
you don't
do
have to
we?
reframe it. I just really forgot what it was.
Oh, I was gonna say, well, since you said you don't like the terminology of better,
No,
like
that's okay. That's just my own thing.
I, I was gonna say, like, how do we interact with others consciously so that we have a good outcome
Mm-mm-mm.
with
Okay.
them?
All right. So I think it really does go back to being aware of the self, or aware of our, like, those aspects we talked about of our consciousness. So like, what am I thinking right now? What, like, what is my imagination telling me that like this person should be doing that they're not doing? Uh what am I feeling right now? Like, what am I sensing? You know, does my heart feel like it wants to close? Do I feel like there needs to be a boundary here? Am I like, do I feel like I need to take a breath? And really having awareness of all those aspects of ourself in the moment, and having, I mean, it's the moment, but then it's also like, right, like how did I take care of myself today? Like, did I drink the water? Did I eat? Did I do my exercise? Did I, overwork? Like, where am I in this like capacity thing with all those like circles? And then, yeah, like how have I been maintaining all of those things? So, I mean, I think that's kind of what it is for me, finding balance between all of those things in myself and being aware of where I am with that. And then bringing that with me to like my interactions.
That's awesome that you brought it back to the individual and how taking care of your own individual body can really improve the interactions that you have with other people. I often think about like, okay, so like just for instance, I've seen coworkers who just like being around them enough, I know they don't drink um like a healthy amount of water. And so they're just in a constant state of dehydration, and like how that really affects the chemical processes of the brain. And you know, it maybe just something as simple as like really focusing on just having a healthy amount of water throughout the day can just greatly improve, your overall existence. And like if you do it one day and then you do it the next day and then you do it for a month and then you do it for a year, and it just becomes the way that you live. And like how would you really, like what could be the measuring of an increase of health from like day one to all the way through a year? And I definitely think it's like the amount of water that you drink, for sure. Like I could even see like if I'm having like a really stressful day at work, like I'll go like maybe like 2 hours without having any water. And then like I'm like, oh, I'm getting stressed out. All right, I need to drink water.
Mm.
I don't know. It's just like something like it's it seems simple, and that's because it really is just that simple.
Well, I think a lot of the things we could do to be healthy are simple. And I think that there's probably way more things that we could do that give us a way to be empowered in our health. I mean, from like what I've been experiencing recently, there are, learning more about my health and learning more about different ways that I can take control of it and like the choices that I can make on a daily basis. Yeah, it really it is like the smaller things. It's not the like, does the body look this way, or
Yeah.
yeah, and it's not
Yeah.
just one thing, which is kind of cool too.
Yeah, it's all of them combined. It's like those Venn diagrams where it's just like overlapping. It's like Venn diagram times like 1,000, you know?
Yeah, well, we've made it so complicated. I mean, I guess we are kind of complicated, but then yeah, with all the modern, I don't know, conveniences, even things like how much time do you spend on your phone, or like are you using your phone before bed?
Or when you get up and the first thing in the morning. That's
Yeah,
exactly
or
what
like
I
what are
did.
you
And like
doing
I
on
knew
your
it.
phone? Oh, sorry, I just kind of cut you off.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I'm just saying, like, I went on my phone immediately before drinking water and I knew it, but I was like, screw it. I'm gonna go watch some like funny videos and get that dopamine hit. But yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I mean, even things like eating in front of your computer. I didn't realize that that's an unhealthy thing, because the radiation that you get from your computer affects your digestion while you're eating in front of the computer. I mean, how many people eat in front of their computer?
I'm sure that probably adds up. But I would say like if someone is just eating like shit and they're eating like shit in front of their computer, the first thing you need to solve is eating like shit.
I mean, I think they're both issues. Both are going to lead to inflammation.
Yeah. 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 Oh, okay. I love that. Yeah. Solve both problems at once.
Yeah, and I
Stop
mean
eating
they're
like
both,
shit
and
and
either
turn
one
off the
is
computer.
like two little things you could do. You know, they're two like separate things because you could then like eat the salad or eat the, you know, organic grass-fed pasture-raised beef in front of your computer, and you're still getting inflamed because you're eating because it's impairing your digestion.
Yeah. I often think about how our modern technology is affecting our body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like going back to like what you were saying about like distractions and how we can be like using these screens as distractions. Like I catch myself over and over again of just like I'm bored. I don't feel like doing what I have to do. I'm gonna go on the screen and watch a funny dog video or cat video or just like something stupid. Not saying that dog and cat videos are stupid.
No, I get
Legitimately like
it.
something stupid online.
Yeah. Well,
And
there's that balance, right? Because it's cool that you could watch your phone and see a funny video and something that like brings you joy or like injects that like fun or like lightheartedness or like levity into the day. But then, right, like how am I using this? How am I using this is like another aspect of it.
yeah, absolutely. And that's balance. That is balance. And you know, I also think it takes like I don't I don't know what it is. I think it takes like decision, engagement, and will, and the combination of the three to be able to not be distracted by technology. And I still haven't mastered it.
Mm.
I like I said, I still get distracted by it sometimes, but I just like to work on it and get better just day by day. Going back to what we were saying or what you were saying before about the terminology of like betterment. I like that word betterment because it it points the betterment inwards, right? It's not like
Mm.
outwards where it's like I'm gonna go be in a competition with someone and I'm gonna beat them and then I'm gonna think about myself as better. When I think of like betterment, it just goes right inside like, hey, what are the problems that I have and what are the tools that I have to deal with it so that, you know, by tomorrow I can have just a little bit of a better day. And today I could have a bit of a better day than I did yesterday. And often I notice like themes come up in my life that I have to deal with over and over and over again. And many of them I just don't want to deal with at all. But it's the practices, the the spiritual practices that really, from what I found, have given me the tools to be able to interface with those challenges just day by day and just get a little bit better and better, just through increments. And yeah, have you found something similar?
Yeah, I think that reminds me. So we talked a little bit before about how you were talking about, you know, your exercise challenges. So I had those as well, and it was like around 2008. So I was like had lots of eating. It wasn't eating disorders, but it was called like disordered eating. Um, Lots of like body image issues, like thinking I had a different body than I really did, and like criticizing myself for that, and just like lots of no, not a lot of self acceptance. So that's been, you know, like 13 or 14 years ago. But from starting to work on that stuff, it just, you know, became this constant path of like having to fix myself. And then before that, obviously, like I was trying to fix myself too with like the diet and with the exercise. So I got to a point most recently where it's like, all right, I don't want to always be fixing myself. I don't want to always be coming at life from this place of I have to get better, right? Like I want to approach life as I'm like a wholeness or like this, I'm whole. Not that I have to be better. but then also, then this kind of goes back to what you were just saying, with the betterment. I guess I'm looking at it more now from this perspective of, right, I want to be, and not like I'm not loving and not that I'm not accepting, but right, how can I love more? How can I open when I want to close, right? Like, how can I turn to someone when I want to say F you? How can I be more accepting? How can I be more compassionate? How can I be more aware? How can I, be more conscious of everything that is happening around me and inside of me, and right, bring like the capacity to hold all of that and embrace all of it uh, at once. So I think that's kind of where I'm coming from at this point. More so, just working on those, yeah, like those. I don't know, are they principles as well?
Yeah,
No,
yeah. I
the
mean,
truth, being more honest, being more like in integrity with the things that are important and the things that I believe in, right? Like having more of the acceptance, having more, being more of those kinds of things. So in that way, it doesn't have to be like, am I better? Because really, how do you define like, am I more accepting or less accepting? I mean, obviously you can, but
I like that. I like that. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think it's interesting in the way of where you're saying where you just desire to get to a point where you don't have to work on fixing yourself. But then I thought about it as in the terms of if you're getting to a point where you no longer need to fix yourself, isn't that getting better or being better? I don't know. Maybe not.
yeah, I mean, maybe it's all like semantics. But yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
it
that's
is.
the
It's
thing. I
probably all
think I did
semantics.
fix
Yeah.
myself. Maybe that is what it is. Like, I fixed myself. Ah! No, I mean, I'm still totally working on my health though all the time. Like I just told you, realizing there's so many other ways for me to be healthy. It's not just the food. I think a big one for people may be like, what are you consuming in terms of like media? What are you listening to? Whose opinions, what opinions are you taking in? I cut out like listening to the news. Uh,
Same.
I mean, well over 4, 5, or 6 years ago, I was getting to the point of like, what? Why am I like driving myself, to be mad or frustrated or anxious by what I'm taking in? So now I'm just uninformed, and I'm okay with that, to be honest. And sometimes, like when I do turn on the news, or Louis will turn on the news, I'll have to turn it right off because I could feel my anxiety spike. And then also, I realize like I have the two young kids. I'm like, they can't hear this kind of stuff. It's so inappropriate for them.
Yeah, I'm sure that must be tough raising kids, uh, just in general.
Oh yeah, it's
Um,
really challenging to be, conscious of their health and then the things like they want to consume. And then especially like, all of the things I'm like kind of learning now that aren't so healthy for us, in terms of even just like the packaging that our food is in, or like the ingredients in the toothpaste, or just all of that kind of other stuff. I guess that's,
yeah, you
I
could
mean,
fast for a day and actually get those things to get out of your body, or maybe like 3 days, depending on how long it's been since you last did a fast.
I think it's probably even longer than that. It
Yeah,
starts
maybe.
affecting our endocrine system. So I'm not exactly sure how long it would
Mm,
even take to. And honestly, if you think about like all of the
true.
stuff you'd have to abstain from, I read this one book called Plastics, where the author was saying she wanted to think about all of the. Hold on, let me think about this for a second. she wanted to like think about all of the things that she was using that weren't plastic, but she realized that everything that she was using was plastic. So I'm not saying it right. She just came to the realization that almost every single thing that you touch is on a daily basis is composed of some kind of plastic. And then all of that stuff ends up disrupting our endocrine system. So
Yeah, yeah. I think I listened to a Rogan podcast where he had this woman on and she was like doing I'm sorry, this has got me laughing because like her research was on men's taint sizes and how they were shrinking because of use of plastic. Like,
is that real? Because I know he also had on those people that made
is it?
those fake research studies that got approved, and there was like a big controversy around that. Well, it does affect men as well, and it does affect their fertility. I mean,
Yeah,
it
that's
affects
another thing I'm
everybody.
talking
It's
about
not
fertility.
only. I mean, it affects everyone's biology, and it's. I mean, God, this is like a whole nother, a whole
I'm
nother
sorry,
topic.
but
I
like
could go on and on and on and on and on and on and on about this for
the
days.
the mental image though of just like a line
Who's
of
measuring
dudes.
that?
Yeah, just like
I
a
don't want
line of
that
dudes
job.
with like, and she's there with like a ruler, like next.
What kind of ruler do you even use for that
I don't
though?
know. I just that's funny though.
It's funny. I'm thinking of like my kids' buttholes because I wipe their butts still sometimes, and it's so funny how their buttholes are so different. Like or even like their butt cheeks. This might be. I might be doing like child pornography now, even talking about this.
You're gonna get us flagged.
I know. Sorry. It was just.
Yeah, no, I mean, like going back to just like what we have to interface with that might not be like so good for our health. Like, I mean, I live on a busy road in a city, and just dealing like with exhaust all the time. Like, I don't ever
Yeah, that's
like
even a
unless I get
huge
out of the
one too.
city. Yeah, I don't ever get clean air.
The exhaust. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm grateful for cars and things like that. But like we were saying, like there's pros and cons.
Just
Like
reminded me
the
of the Facts of Life. Did you? I don't know if you were watched that show. It's probably like on reruns by the time you
maybe
were.
maybe the
Because it's
facts
like
of
you take
life.
the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life. Because
Facts of life. Who was in that?
uh, you know
What's the
what? I
name of the
can't
main
even like think
character?
of what show it was. It's on Different Strokes, right? The Facts of Life. Is it the family? Like the Seavers? Like the dad
The
was
Beavers? The Beavers?
no. Oh,
Wasn't
that
that
was like
Leave
Leave It to
Beaver?
Beaver. That was like before the Facts of Life. No. The Facts of Life was they live with Mrs. Garrett. She was like it was like a girls' school. I don't know a school. It was like a few girls that were living together.
I don't. I might have watched this when my mom had it on when I was a really little kid.
It was a good show. I mean, I remember it being a good show.
Yeah, I don't remember that one.
It's probably before your time.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Pretty much 90s and above.
All
I'll probably know what you're talking about, but
right, now
unless
this
it's
is
like,
definitely the 80s.
yeah, if it's Golden Girls in the 80s, I remember that one. But yeah, that's another thing though of like, what are we taking in that is affecting us? I mean, a lot of those shows were funny, but like the under message that they had might not have been like the healthiest thing.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to go back and rewatch all of those to see how they twisted up my little brain. It certainly was twisted, though.
Yeah. I mean, I just like for instance, like I've been watching this one anime and it's called My Hero Academy. And it actually relates to what we're talking about as far as like getting better, but like they're getting better is like being in competition with one another and like duking it out to see like who's the best.
Yeah, that's huge in I think in like our mass media,
Yeah. Yeah,
that
it is.
split. I know, I mean, I see it in my kid stuff all the time.
Yeah.
One
Yeah,
thing
I
too
think,
that just reminded me, it's a little bit off what you were just saying, but we have so much more information now about like um even just development of the brain. So in the 80s, like there just wasn't even as much knowledge about about our anatomy and like the function of it as there is now. So even like the approaches or the way we were parented or the things people believed how children should act, which really shapes our health, they've really changed over the years.
yeah, absolutely. I find it really interesting how, all right, this is just one instance, but I just find it interesting that when I was in school, right, there was like a homecoming king and queen. Now, and it was the queen was the girl and the king was the boy. And my mom, she sent me an article from about the high school that I went to, and apparently there, I guess, was some boy who thinks he's a girl, and uh, and received homecoming queen. And so there was two boys. One was the homecoming
Huh.
queen, and one was the homecoming king. I was like, huh. Like just like thinking back, like 10 years ago, if you would have like told me that that would happen, I would have just like, as far as like where culture was back then, I would have just like said you're crazy.
Yeah, it's so interesting because you really have to take all of that into consideration when you're thinking about the health. And then there goes like the health of like the individual versus the health of the collective versus how like there's that constant kind of like give and take between all of us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And going back to like the collective health and the conversation around that. I mean, I don't really know like what goes on when someone thinks that, they're of the opposite sex, but it definitely seems to be some cognitive dissonance there. Just like looking at it from like, if it's like I don't even know how to describe it. And I would say like I couldn't relate because like I never really have like I've never really thought about myself um in those ways. But I don't know, going back to like having compassion, like people were like such in an uproar about it. And then like,
Mm,
you get like two sides of it. There's like the uproar, right? Of like, how could it be this way? And blah, 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 blah. And then you get the other side of it where they're then confirming it. And it's like I look at this, he's essentially just a child, you know, or like a kid, teenager. And like, like if you have like people reaffirming that, I mean, I don't know. It's just like I think it's something that we need more compassion towards. Not to say like, I don't know. That's such a hard subject. I just think like I think there needs to be compassion all around for it.
yeah, I 100% agree with that. That compassion, all those like um heart qualities is what we could bring to any situation. I think to diffuse the kind of the very hard line that we may find ourselves between not necessarily understanding like how does the individual feel and how were they influenced by a culture or how are they influenced by like what's inside of them. And I mean, how are we to ever really know? Like you're saying, I don't I don't think I experience like a mismatch between like the like the biological sex that my body was born into, and then what society kind of tells me I am. I mean, I can understand that in some way. Like with femininity, I feel like there are certain like qualities or ideals of like what's feminine, and then maybe like if you don't have that or don't engage in that or like do that, then maybe you're not looked at as feminine. Okay, thanks for letting me know. Um, but yeah, that's not the same exact thing. I understand is, feeling right, like you're not the the thing that your biology says you are, or the thing that your biology is expressing. Yeah, so I don't know. I think the way you do deal with that is compassion, because that's just like I'm gonna offer you grace for being and doing and feeling what's there for you, as well as all of the other influences that are
Yeah. Yeah. And
competing. So yeah, I think the way to go with that is just the loving and accepting and embracing that. And then
yeah.
we're right moving forward or moving to another place from there.
Yeah. And like I mean, the way I think about it too is, you have your biological form, and like within that biological form, there's uh chemical processes, and
Mm,
there is testosterone and estrogen, and a man doesn't only just have testosterone. A male also has estrogen, and the same thing for women. A woman just doesn't have just estrogen. There's also just women have testosterone as well. And I mean, I always think about it like, there's for every male, like there's going to be a little bit of femininity, and the same thing for females. There's going to be a little bit of masculinity. And I mean, I like I've heard of like old samurais who would have like a balance aspect of both, and they would practice balance aspects of both, like calligraphy and painting, and then like going and chopping people up with swords. Which I'm not saying you have to do that, but like just the understanding that you know no matter like what you are, like you're gonna, if you're a male, you're gonna have certain feminine qualities to you, and if you're a female, you're gonna have certain masculine qualities to you, and it's not like this like all or nothing game.
yeah, I mean, I see that, but I don't know. I mean, you're talking about samurais, so
It
I
was a
don't
bad
know a
example,
lot
sorry.
about samurais. Wait, what'd you say?
I said it was a bad example, sorry.
Oh, no, I don't think it was a bad example, but I think that they are like, highly disciplined, highly like attuned, like very like consciously aware. And not to say that other people are not, but I feel like they're almost like a anomaly, let's say. Um, and then there's everyone else, yeah, and they get a lot of like this is what's coming at me from the way I was taught, or the culture around me, or what my parents and like what the generations before me taught me to be like.
Yeah.
So I think it's not necessarily that people do or don't want to. It's more like this was conditioned into me, or like this way of being, or like this definition of masculinity was like the definition I was born into. And not like the biological way, but like the
Yeah.
like the gender way, right? Like the thing that's constructed, the thing that's defined not in and of what it is, but
Like think about
by
like,
the society or culture.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, that's okay.
I was gonna say, like, I just thought of the example of like sort of that construct of like men don't cry,
Yeah,
right?
I
It's only
mean,
women. Like that's just so crazy.
right, it's
If you really
100%
stop to
not
consider it.
true. But how many, if you like went and took a poll of men, how many would agree with that?
A lot, I'm sure.
Right. And because that had been like suppressed out of them, like, of course men cry.
Yeah.
It's a
Everyone
function
does.
of like the human anatomy.
Yeah,
And it's
exactly.
not acceptable. Or it hadn't been.
Yeah, which I find quite sad, to be
Oh,
quite
it's so
honest.
sad.
Like,
I
yeah,
mean,
which
and that
just,
kind of like brings us to like the state of, the state of how things are.
yeah, yeah. I think though what we were saying about like having compassion, like and even compassion for yourself, like if you are really, on the journey of, just being healthy, like sometimes you're gonna slip up and that's okay too.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. All right,
Yeah.
Nicholas.
All right, Melissa.
I think we talked a lot today about health and consciousness. I'm not sure we got to any kind of conclusion.
Yeah, we didn't get to a conclusion.
I
I
don't
don't
know if
think so
there is a
anyway.
conclusion.
I don't think so either. But I think that's the exploration of it.
Yeah.
Continual, which is awesome.
I feel like this topic in and of itself could be a constant
I think so.
touchstone.
Yeah, a constant theme for sure. For sure.